All right, it's Friday. Let's lighten up a bit. On today's edition of Show Business, we are delving into the manifesto of the new forces, Nana Kwame Bediako, also known as Cheddar, who has emphasized the need for Ghana to build a world-class film studio to transform the creative industry. Now, beyond the film studio, he has outlined a range of policies to boost the economy, including tourism, digitalization, and entrepreneurship. The big question now is how can these policies propel Ghana's economy and make the creative industry more competitive globally? Well, he has all the answers. Joining me, culture journalist Kwame Bediako, to help us unpack this. I like the sound of that. Were his policies, did they meet your expectation? Maybe you can outline a few and whether or not, you're impressed by some of the policies that Cheddar handed out.
So for his manifesto specifically, there were a lot of expectations knowing the background that he comes from. A lot of people before the political, angle that he took knew him for his work a lot in the creative industry as well, in terms of the hoteliers industry. And also when it comes to tourism, people knew him in that space before he committed to this political agenda. So people were really looking forward to how that specific sector in his New Forces manifesto is going to have the propensity to propel growth in that particular space. That is why people expected him to deliver specifically, if not anywhere in the manifesto, that specific point was supposed to, re-echo his background and experience in that specific field. So for me personally, I wasn't quite surprised the lane he took. He went to some technicalities of the sector itself. And so for me, I was expecting that from him. And indeed, on that score, I think he did some in-depth research and produced, a result that people feel like if he's given a chance, may sort of do some good for the creative industry and the tourism.
What stood out to you, though? We are here and talk about a world-class film studio. Is that for you the highlight of his presentation?
For me, it would be just a bit of the presentation, because when it comes to the building of film studios, it's not something that is very new when it comes to manifestos. For the past 2 weeks, we have talked about different manifestos from different political parties, and almost all of them actually have indicated the need for a film studio or a studio of some sort. And so that is not quite new, but the fact that he includes it in his manifesto, because the mere fact that someone has it in his does not mean that you cannot communicate that if that is also what your policy is aligned with. But beyond that, it also talks about the creation or the support for, the NDC and MP manifesto basically have talked about support for local content and content creation. Just that the way in which Nana Kwame Bediako talks about his is quite unique, because a lot of them have talked about support, but it hasn't been clear how exactly the support is going to be. But the New Forces manifesto talks about the fact that it's going to implement strategies that are going to protect the intellectual property of creatives, artists, musicians, every other creative endeavor in that particular space. And he feels like if their intellectual property are protected, it sort of holds them down when it comes to the base of their content, for which reason they can now do some monetization and be able to reap some active or passive income from their work. And so that is one thing that I feel like he hits home actually when it comes to.
Yeah, and what challenges do you anticipate with that?
There are a few challenges, because there's a reason why some of these things have not been touched on in the past, because of framework challenges when it comes to the collection of royalties, when it comes to giving artists their due, when it comes to the technological space. It is one thing to go and exhibit your work publicly and get paid for it. And it's another thing in this digital age to have your work online and have people give you money for that. And that is where piracy comes in, which he talked about also in his manifesto, that he's going to liaise with the creative sector and also the national security and also the other authorities in the creative sector to ensure that piracy is clamped down on, to ensure that artists or creatives are going to get their due. That is why I find a challenge, because it's going to be it's quite a new terrain,
right?
So it's going to be quite difficult to handle. But if focused on, there's some good there for the industry as well.
All right, thank you so much, Kwame Bediako. I hear this weekend is Homowa at Teshi.
Yeah, there's a season of festivities for the Ghana community.
All right,
there's a lot happening.
to give you an idea how to spend your weekend. Thanks, Ken.